Welcome to the Sound Health Portal. As an apprentice, you have access to an incredible tool to learn the power of sound health technology. The first thing we'll do, of course, is log on and put in your username, password, and click on Log On. If you don't remember your password, by clicking on Restore Password, we'll give you an option to create a new password. But for now, let's just move forward and look at what's available in the portal. Once you log on, you're sent to the page of the list of your clients. So before we go into the process of creating a client folder and adding information to the client's folder like voice files or creating evaluations and things like that, let's just take a minute to learn about the different functions on this page. When we look at this top row, this thing looks like a palette, and it's called a theme chooser. So for example, if I want something like red wine, it changes the overall skin or appearance of my tools, and I prefer Office 2010 Blue. We'll click back to that. This search function is a global search, so anything that shows up on this page, let's say I have 50 clients, for example, it's quite a long list, and I want to find somebody specific and I don't want to scroll through the rows of information. If I type something in here, it'll find everything that has those letters in it. It can be one letter, it can be as many letters as you want to filter through all the information that you have on this page. Next button I want to show you is the New. If I click on New, it creates a new client. It'll send me to a page where I am creating a new folder for a new client and also provide a cover sheet of that folder, meaning the client's name and just various details of that nature. So that is where I begin to create a new client's folder. As you can see, I already have 3 folders, you might say, in my portal cabinet. The next button is grayed out because I haven't selected anything. It requires at least one object selected. Well, what are objects? Objects are these folders that I have for these 3 clients. So if I select one of them, I use this series of boxes here. I can select all of them if I wish by clicking here. I can unselect whatever has been selected by clicking again, or I can select one of them by clicking here. Once I've selected an object or a client's folder, delete is now active. So if I click on delete, it'll ask me if I'm sure I want to delete that record, and I'll say OK, and now I've just deleted client number 3. Refresh simply refreshes the page if there's something that's anomalous. This little button is kind of interesting. It resets all settings made for the client view. And this is not the default client view. So if I click this, when you first log in, you'll see the default layout. But I'm going to show you how to create a layout that you prefer. And this is something you can experiment with and just get used to having your own choices as far as how things are laid out. So let's click this button. And it'll ask me again, do you want to proceed? And I'll say, OK. Now we're at the default layout view. We have a column titled Client. We have a column titled Region. And this little button is telling me that it is being sorted by ascending order. If I click in this box, for example, you'll see that little triangle reverses. It's now descending, largest to smallest, or Z to A. And so Laura is first because it's L versus C. If I want to learn more about what's available here, I want to show you how we're going to now edit and set up the layout the way I prefer. So you might see my arrow turn into a hand with a finger sticking up. That means I can select this. Let's use the right mouse button, click on it, and it opens up a menu of various things. For example, this group of boxes, these blank boxes, is another way to filter out information. So if I type in, for example, Smith, I just put in 3 letters, and it gives me everything with an SMI in it. So this is a column filter function whereas this is a global filter. So if I were to put in something that was located in either one of these in multiple different folders, it would show everything on the global level. But if I'm looking at a specific piece of information within the column, I use this search function. So again, if I click on this, it's going to say you want to default. Yeah, now it's back to the default, meaning it's ascending where I had it on descending. So let's go back in here and show you some of the other ways to edit how this is being viewed. What I often don't prefer is I'm just starting out and only have a couple clients is I really don't need these filters for the columns. So I click or uncheck filter row, and as you can see, it disappears. Another thing I like to see is kind of when I worked on a client last. And I can do that by seeing this menu of optional columns that I can add. And I like to use updated. So I'll left click and drag it out of that box. And see the little arrows that pop up? It'll set this column wherever I wish. I like to put it first, so I'll drop it there. Now I also like to see any notes that I might have on a client. So I'll left click on notes and we'll go and put it at the end. As far as region, I'm not too concerned about region. I can left click on this box and drag it into the column chooser like this. And so I have other columns I can create, but generally this is all I really care to have for my preferred setup. So again, if I click on this button, now that I've set this up, it's going to default it back to the layout that is not how I prefer it. But what's nice about this is every time I log in, this layout comes forward. I don't have to rebuild it every time I use the portal. Export to allows me to take my list of clients or anything that's on this page and export it to an external file and onto my local machine. So this is just an option to export what you're seeing on the page, and we'll be using that later, and we will spend time understanding how that works after we completed this process. Okay, so I have two folders in my office, in my file cabinet, and what I want to do is I want to go into one of my clients' folders. I showed you how to delete by selecting it by using the boxes here, and I can delete that way, or now I want to actually open the folder. Well, to do that, I can go anywhere in this row and open Cole Smith's folder. And inside Cole Smith's folder are voice files that I've uploaded and evaluations that I've created based on those voice files and information about our client. So information you might consider it as the cover sheet, the client's name and some other general details, and I'll show you that information. So what we're seeing here now is the Voice Files tab. If I want to add a new voice file, I would click on this New, and I can see though that I have some valuable information. I have an evaluation count and a description. This is the description of the voice file and how many evaluations I've created for this voice file, when the voice file was recorded, and the name of the voice file. And what you're seeing here is not default. So once again, let's go through the process of making this the way I like it. Let's go back to the default view that you will see when you first log in to the portal. The eval count has been moved to the end. I prefer to see it over here. So we'll just left click and drag it over. And now it's set up the way I prefer. In evaluations, remember it said eval count 2, and here they are, the voice file that was attached these evaluations to, and the name of those evaluations, or the session name of those evaluations, and when they were last updated and when they were created, etc. So we'll go through this process as far as creating a client, uploading voice files, and creating evaluations for those voice files after I give you this kind of bird's eye view. Also, we have this Info tab, and here is the cover sheet information. Cole Smith, male, born 11/7/2001, and they're in the New York area. Cole has some symptoms that I've attached with this button and notes. For example, I added some notes here for my client when I created their cover sheet. I can go back and edit these things, and I'll show you how to do that. It's quite simple. You'll see that you have an edit option up here now. If I click on edit while I'm in Cole Smith's folder, this is now taking me to the cover sheet information that I can actually edit. So Cole Smith is actually Cole Brown. And he was born not on the 7th, he was born on the 13th. So I can save this, save and close, save and new, or cancel. Let me show you what happens when I click on save. It basically just updates the information that I put. I'm still in the edit mode. I can still change things if I want to add something else about Cole's in the note department or change his birthday or region, etc. If I click on save and close, I am now looking at my client list. I changed Cole Smith to Cole Brown, and I'm back to my clients page. Let's go back into Cole Brown. Go back to info, and you can see I have this edit capability no matter where I am. This is the edit of Cole's folder. So if I click on edit, it sends me back to the cover sheet where I can change things. So it's actually Cole Smith. And we're going to save this. Again, save and close sends me back to the client's list in this instance. Save and new will create a new client. But I also want to show you what these little arrows do. Remember how many clients I have? I have 2 clients. One of them is Cole Smith, and this green arrow will send me to my next client. And now I'm in Laura Hansen's folder, and I am able now to edit things on the cover sheet of Laura Hansen's folder. So what this does is allow me to stay at the cover sheet level of all my clients. I can change things as I wish, save them, and then move to the next folder and edit that information, etc., etc. So that is what these arrows do. They help move to the next record, whatever it is. And this function changes depending on what level into a client's folder you have drilled. We were working on Cole Smith. We have created 2 evaluations, and they'll show up here. And this is other information about this voice file. Okay, now let's begin the process of creating a new folder, a new cover sheet, uploading some voice files, and creating evaluation for those voice files. To do that, I can simply go to this New Client button, and when I click it, it opens up a new cover sheet editing capability. So my next client that I'm going to create today is Bob Brown. And birthday, I can select the calendar menu here if I wish, or I can type something in. So 5/15/1984, oops, /1984. And Bob Brown is in Arizona. Bob has muscle complaints and poor circulation, as well as weight problems. Okay. So we can save this, or we can click on Save and Close. And let me show you what happens when I click on Save and Close. Save and New, as you remember, will create this folder with this cover sheet information and open up the opportunity for another client. Save and Close. What it's done is, okay, you've created this folder for Bob Brown. and this is the information that you've provided about Bob Brown. Another thing I can add in information are the symptoms. So let's link some symptoms from the database to Bob Brown. So Bob has kind of a chronic weight problem. So let's type in weight or some version thereof. And he has weight gain issues. And as you can see, it's here. But he also has muscle problems. So we'll type in what I can remember how to spell muscle. And anything with an M-U-S-C shows up. And muscle atrophy, I think he needs to get off his chair a little bit more often, but that's just me. Muscle weakness and muscle cramps. So I've selected multiple items. Click on OK, and these are general symptoms linked now to Bob Brown's folder and actually part of his cover sheet. These are generally things that are specific to his overall well-being. It's time now to create a voice file for Bob Brown, and after we've completed the process of creating it in Audacity, edited it so that it doesn't have any extraneous noises or the level is proper and things of that nature, it's time now to upload that file. And we'll click on New Voice File, and it sends me to the page where I'm able now to go to my local machine and browse for a voice file. So we have a couple voice files here, and we record two 30-second voice files, and one has to do with Bob talking about his health issues, and I marked it as an H. The other one is just Bob talking about anything kind of on the mundane level, so that's why it's with an M. So we'll select our first voice file that we created, and then we'll load it in here. If I leave this blank, when I save this, it'll create a description that is basically a duplication of the file's name. Yeah, I don't need to do that. I know it's Bob Brown because I'm in his folder, but I might want to see the word health as far as his first health file that I created. Now, the recorded date has to do with when this was recorded, and I'll show you how to fix this after I make a mistake. Obviously, this was not recorded today, but we'll go ahead and save and new because I know I have another voice file. So by saving this one to his folder, I can now go back to another page just like the one we were at and add another file by clicking on Save and New. So we'll click on Browse. And as you can see, the date of these recordings was on the 10th of September. So we'll click on the next file I want to upload to his folder. And this is Mundane. And as you noticed, it was on the 10th, so I'll open up the calendar and click on 10. And I'm good. I don't have any more files to upload, so I'm not going to use Save and New Voice File. I'll click on Save and Close. So this sends me back into Bob Brown's folder. It presumes that since I've uploaded this voice file, the next thing I want to do is create an evaluation. So it's now provided me the option to create a new evaluation. And by clicking on New here, it will open up the next level of information based on that voice file. But before we do this, I want to go back and make sure both voice files have the proper date. So we'll do that by going back to the breadcrumb here where we're working with Bob Brown. Shows me on the Voice Files tab the two voice files. But notice that there's an error in the date. I want to change this to September 10th. So what we do is we click on this anywhere in this row, And I want to edit this, so we'll click here. And you might recognize this page. This is back to where I can input information about this voice file. I want to change the date, so I'll click here, go to September 10th, save and close. What it's going to do now is say, okay, you've got the proper information, and now we want to create an evaluation for one of these voice files. Because as you can see here, the eval count is 0. So to make a new evaluation, I have two ways of doing it. I can select which one, and notice how new evaluation becomes active. I can also delete that voice file if I want to, or I can create a new evaluation. So if I select which one I want to evaluate, click on New Evaluation, it's going to send me to the page that allows me to create a name or a session name for that evaluation. And it gave it the name Evaluation 1 on 9/27/06. I'll say, how would you say, Demo 1 Eval. Okay. So this is an image of the voice file, and I'll show you how to maneuver and manipulate this. But for now, what I want to do is just simply click Save and Close and show you what happens when I do that. I'm still in the evaluation. I'm in Demo 1 Eval, and this is the wave page or tab that we were at before. But I have some other functionalities here that are now available because I've now created this evaluation for that voice file for Bob Brown. And let's go back and just refresh what we've done. I have uploaded 2 voice files. I've created an evaluation. I haven't done anything with it yet, but I've created an evaluation for Mundane. And if I go to the Evaluations tab, I'll see that I have this voice file titled Mundane, which is the description of the voice file. And this is the session name I gave it, Demo 1 Eval. And so these 2 angles or tabs show a different perspective on the same information. So I can look at the world of voice files, or I can look at the world of evaluations, however I want. Maybe I want to have the session name first. I can drag and drop it over there. And now I know that these are the sessions I have. Maybe I want to know when it was updated last, etc. So I can lay this out any way I wish, whatever suits me as far as how I like to think through the process of creating information about my client. Let's go through the process again by creating another evaluation for our Mundane voice file. Click on this selection box, and that opens this tab, New Evaluation. Let's give this a session name, New Eval 2. Save and close will send us to the page where we continue with the evaluation. So now we have additional tabs here. Here's a rendering of the WAV file that we're going to edit, as well as the ability to attach symptoms to this specific evaluation. So, for example, I have this WAV file. I can make many evaluations, and perhaps in one evaluation I'm going to kind of focus in on a particular symptom or a certain kind of angle on what my client's complaint is. By using this tab, I'm able to attach in the database symptoms that are relevant to that goal by clicking on link, and our client focus with this evaluation will be regarding muscles. And he has muscle strain, muscle twitch, muscle weakness. So I can select anything in here, and then I click OK. And now it attaches those symptoms to this evaluation. Another way of doing that is, let's say I have something to do with numbness. So I'll type in a little bit of numb. Oops. Yeah. Okay. And then we'll say, okay, he has numbness. If I select just one item here versus using the select option, if I do it that way, what happens is it just adds that one thing automatically. So let's say Our client has a NumPy. So instead of using the selections and clicking on OK, I can just select whichever item I want and it adds it automatically. On the MEMO tab, this is not accessible unless I'm in the edit mode, and I can re-establish the edit mode by clicking edit here. And here we are with the MEMO tab. That's the name we gave it. This is kind of where we were before when I clicked save and close, remember? Now I have the ability to add information on the MEMO tab. I can type text in here, I can copy and paste, I can accent things by bolding it or italicizing, I can change the font size, I can use different kinds of fonts, etc., etc. So you're able to kind of create a report or a memo for this specific evaluation. Okay, let's go back to the evaluation and look at this wave file, and let's spend a little time learning about how to navigate on the Wave tab so that we're able to pull points. A couple features that are available is, first of all, I have a subscription to certain templates. So if I open this, for example, I'll see that my subscription includes 3 different templates. I have Muscle Performance, Nutrition Provider, and PTSD. This column is showing me what I've selected last time I selected something. If I want to change what I'm going to be viewing this wave file in, or the lens I'm going to use to look at the database matrix, I use this column here. So instead of using Nutrition Provider, let's say I use PTSD. So selected was Nutrition Provider, but what is now going to be selected is PTSD. Click OK. So again, our report templates. Right now, this column shows what I have selected the last time I selected one of my templates. This column is where I will select something different, like Nutrition Provider. And by clicking OK, it's now changed my lens from PTSD to Nutrition Provider. So this is historically what I had, and this is what I'm going to use. If I click Cancel, of course, it'll stay at PTSD. If I click OK, it'll switch from PTSD to Nutrition Provider. So that is the report template. Now, let's look at pull points. If I click on this, it's basically going to pick 12 highest points and 12 lowest points, because I have a maximum of 24 points. The other option, of course, is to pull my own points, and that is something that's kind of fun, where you are kind of zooming in and looking at things and finding things that are anomalous, and a lot of time is saved by using this feature in the portal by just clicking pull points, but you might miss something because of the automatic functionality. You might miss something that's of interest, like for example when you look at this slope down and then it kind of jumps, there's a bit of a gap in there. Things like that are anomalies that you might want to have on your collection of points that you pull. So to delete these points that were automatically pulled by clicking here, what we do is go to the GNS tab, which is basically that information transferred over into another format. Click this Select All button, and then click Delete, and we'll just start over again. All right, let's go back to the wave. Now let's spend a little time learning how we can navigate on this wave file. As you can see, it's a bunch of vertical lines kind of bunched together, and they represent different points. If you watch the dotted line that my mouse is dragging across without touching any buttons, I'm at point 954, and here I'm at 762, and etc., etc. So there are specific landing points between the lowest frequency and the highest frequency that I'm able to select. But sometimes it's hard to get right where you want it. You know, you want to kind of, oh, I'm lucky that time. 355 is where I want it. So if I left click there, bing, I've got one selected point and it's a low. If I try to grab this one, can I do it? Can I do it? You know, I did it. Oh, I missed it. Oh, well, I'll tell you what. Let's show you some really powerful features on zooming. First of all, what you can simply do is take your mouse wheel and roll it toward your monitor, and it zooms in. Let me scroll that back up again. So you're able to zoom in by rolling toward your monitor and zoom out by rolling away from your monitor. Now, if I hold my left click mouse down, and I can drag this over a little bit if I like how close I am, and I can select items a little bit more easily since I'm closer to those parameters. So the requirement is that I need to select at least 6 low points and therefore 6 high points. And so I'm going to pull my mouse wheel toward my wrist and see that I have 2 low points. So since I'm on a mission, I'm going to select the rest of the low points that I need. I need at least 6. Another way of navigating and zooming is this area down here. You might see kind of a shadowy pattern that starts at the bottom of the line. This pattern reflects this information in a different format, but the clear area is now showing me 500 points from this edge to that edge. As you can see, my arrow turns into a finger when I drop down here, and if I left click and hold it and drag it, now it's moving 500 points on my screen from end to end, and I'm able to slide through the entire wave file, keeping it fixed at that zoom level. Let's say I want to get closer. I can take these flags, left click and drag, and I'm able to make it more narrow. So let's say now I've got 350, right? So I can now scroll through this using 350. It is easier to select points when you're closer. And let's do that right now. Let's get my 6 points. I've got 2. There's my third one. Let's drag over here and see what's interesting. Ooh, lots of business going on here. Let's grab that guy. Oh, still not close enough. So I'll take my mouse wheel and select that. Now, if I go back here, it pops back to that other zoom level I was at, which is kind of nice. So it's like my favorite zoom level setting. Let's grab this one. Oops. Okay. And that looks pretty gappy. Let's grab that. I think I'm getting close to having what I need, but I thought I saw something out here that was pretty out there. Let's grab this one. Okay. As you can see, I'm now hovering over point 1881. And if you look at the left side of the screen, you'll see that I've selected 6 points. That's what that number means. So I got my 6 points, but that's okay. I'm going to get some more because I can. So this will be the 7th point, 1964. And as you can see, I've got that. I've got 8 selected. And that very last one, let's grab that. Okay. All right, so I've got things of interest down there. I want to save the rest of my points for things that are above, because majority-wise, let's take a quick zoom. I can see that I got a lot of activity up here, and this gappy thing I thought was kind of interesting. So I want to save my additional GNS points for things that are up in this area. So if I look at this, it says 199. That's the high point. And I'm between 150 and 2000. So if I pull this in really tight and then drag this so my finger is around 199-ish, here we are. Here's that 199 that I was pointing out. So it's 198, probably 199 in there. Yeah, there it is. So what I want to do is, according to the training that's available on videos, I want to get the highest point. So select that. And we'll just keep this tight right now and see what else we got. That's kind of interesting, little bit of a steeple there. That's kind of interesting. It's kind of a large gap. So we'll keep going on our way, maybe pull these out so I have a little bit more of a bird's eye view to make sure I'm not missing anything really pronounced. Like, that's pretty gappy. I think I'm going to grab something over here. So we got that. How are we doing on points? I pulled 13. This is the 14th. And let's go over here, grab this one. And one of those high points over there. I'll zoom in, but with my mouse wheel. Okay. Ooh, that's interesting. Let's grab one of those up there. And that one. How are we doing? 18 selected. Okay, anything in the back end here that, no, not too much. This might be something. I'll select that one and that one. So it's kind of a toss-up. You kind of want to keep a bird's eye view, but you want to be able to select them easily. And sometimes it's a choice between zooming in really close like this, using this to drag things over and say, yeah, that's what I want. Okay. And also using this setting as kind of a default lens level that you can keep sliding through. So there's lots of ways to zoom and navigate as you're pulling your waypoints. This is interesting. It's kind of open there, so we'll grab that one. How am I doing? 22, according to that number that now I think just changed to 23. So I've got 23. This will be my 24th. 24 selected points. Okay, well, I've selected the maximum number of GNS points on this wave file, and we will now update the GNS tab by clicking Update GNS. All right. What has happened? My blue circles with red dots have now changed to red dots with more or less of the turquoise or aqua ring around them. The ring represents how many hits in the matrix. And what is the matrix based on? The matrix is based on the template that I'm using. So if we, for example, click on Report Template, remember we chose Nutrition Provider Program. Let's just for fun change our lens from Nutrition Provider to PTSD. So I'll select this, click OK, and see what happens to the aqua rings around the red circles. Once this is done viewing the matrix through the PTSD lens, you'll see a significant change of how many quote-unquote hits there are. 14. This one, what, 3? Okay. How many would you guess this one has? 2? Yep. How about this one? 4. Okay. Hey, well, let's scroll along here, see what else we got. There might be a case where you say, oh, you know what? I just want things that are anomalous. And there's lots of more anomalous things than those 24 points. But I only want to get things that actually register for PTSD. Yeah, I'm working with someone who has PTSD, and I'm not too concerned about muscles or nutrition or things like that. I want to see what's going on with their post-traumatic stress disorder. And 874, let me zoom in on that one and see how many points it has. Let me scroll down here. 2. All right. I'm going to unselect it, and I use the same method. I left-click on it, and it's been removed. It leaves a marker there so I can see that I've unselected it, so I don't select it again. And now we have 23 points. See the 23 on the left side there? Let's go for one of these here. Let me zoom in by wheeling toward the monitor and select that. All right, I've made a change, so I need to update the GNS. So before really looking at what these hits are, this view gives me the opportunity to see things that are really active according to the lens I'm using, or maybe not so active according to the lens I'm using. So I'm using these color codes to help me make sure that the points that I select have significant information for me. And again, if I change the template, for example, if I click here and we're looking at PTSD, if I change it to another lens, those color codes will change. Let's go to muscle performance this time. Click OK, and let's see what happens to my points. It's now changing lenses, you might say, from the PTSD lens to the muscle performance lens. And watch these circles. Not so much business as we had before. In fact, look at that one. It doesn't even have any hits at all, I betcha. Let's see. Yep, 198, nothing. So what do you say we left click it and delete it? This looks like it just has one. Yeah, okay. And this one just has one. Okay, well, what we'll do, we'll just grab this one and see what else we can find down the road here. We got two more left. And I'm going to select that one. And this looks interesting. Let me grab something there. Okay, 24 selected points. And I'm now going to update the GNS according to the muscles template that I'm using. So there's an incredible amount of flexibility in just looking at the WAV file, selecting points, deleting points, picking new points, using different lenses or report templates. So I can look at what I'm subscribed to, like muscles and nutrition, and right now I have PTSD. And so that is how I navigate, not only zooming in, but also changing what I'm seeing on the WAV tab. For fun, let's go back to Report Template, and I'm going to switch back to PTSD. Again, selected shows what I have been looking through. This is what I want to look through. Click OK. It's always kind of fun when you select points, and then you see they're kind of sparse, not so much business going on these points. But when you change to another program, it's kind of cool when they kind of blossom. Okay, again, look at that. See, nothing on there. So we'll leave it for now. So I'm using this technology to make sure that what I am selecting has significant return on the database. This is a visual type of tool to use. If I click on the GNS tab, it takes this visual information and puts it in kind of a spreadsheet format. So these are the points that I've selected, and its default is the most hits is first, and it reduces itself. Remember that one that didn't have anything? There it is. So we could say, you know what, I want just stuff that has more than 2. So if I select here, I'm selecting these 3 because there's 0 on this 431 and 399 and 872, but everything else is getting a lot more action on the PTSD lens. Since I've selected these and I click delete, it's going to remove those 3 points from the WAV file. So we can go back and see what we see as far as those points. Remember 431? I removed it. Let's go back and grab this one. Let me use my tool here. All right. Got it. All right. And you know, I saw something over here I thought was kind of interesting. It was right in here. I thought I would grab this one. Okay, I removed 3. I just added 2, so I got 1 left. Might as well use the maximum potential. Let's grab this one here. All right, we'll update the GNS and see how those look. All right, I'm pretty happy with that. I've got a lot of action on the points that I've selected. We go back to the GNS tab. It again will show me that, yes, indeed, I've got lots of 3s. I got this 1, 2, but to continue with the presentation, let's just call it good. We've selected what we feel are valuable points based on the report template that we're using, which is PTSD. Now let's go over a little bit of what we have on this page. These are the points that were showing as we were scrolling through that WAV file. You remember seeing that little box on the bottom? These are those point numbers. They also have a equivalent note like C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, etc. And so point 1636 is a G. Well, there are octaves just like on a piano, right? You've got several Gs. And so there's another note, an octave separate from it at 797. So I have 2 Gs, right? And so what we can do is kind of sort this out to help explain some of what you're looking at here. So let's click in this box. By clicking it once, it goes into ascending order. So the lowest point I picked was 107, and it keeps ascending up to the highest point that I picked, which was, I think, at the very end. So why is this red? Why are these green? And why is this blue? Well, that ties in with the Note Correlate window. There's predictive, present, and long-term. So when you're looking at a WAV file, things generally in this area up to a certain point have to do with things that haven't really established themselves in the body yet. So they're predictive, meaning something's coming down the pike, you know, keep your heads up. The next area is called present. So things that are happening now, they could be acute, meaning they might be happening today and gone next week or something like that. But they are in distress presently. Now, if you have a pain or are, you know, having a symptom, then we're talking about something that's chronic or long-term. So things in this general area are long-term. And so what we're looking at are 3 sections: predictive, present, and long-term. And that's why we have color-coded it. Anything in the predictive range will be red, anything in the present will be green, and anything long-term or chronic is in the blue. Okay, that's cool. Now we want to sort by note. So I'll click on Note. And the lowest note, as far as how we have the scale go, is from C to B. So I have 1 C. It has 7 hits according to my lens that I'm using. And I have 3 C sharps, meaning 281, 1115, and 1061, or 161, are all C sharps. And this is showing me that I have 3 C sharps, 2 Ds, 3 D sharps, 2 Es, and how many hits, according to our lens, do these different notes have. Now there's a direct correlation, no pun intended, between this window and this window. And let's figure that out. So if I look at C, it says count 1. Well, it counts 1 C as far as the GNS points that I selected. C sharp, it counts 3. And here are the 3 C sharps. D, here are the 2 Ds. D sharp, there are 3 D sharps. So count has to do with how many times these notes occur in the GNS file. And so you can look at these numbers and say, yeah, they tie in. Why is that important? Well, let's say I'm organizing things by how many hits, my lowest to highest, or if I click it again, my highest to lowest. It's kind of hard to tell how many C sharps I've got in this mess, right? Because it's really being focused in on this. But I can see, according to the Note Correlate chart, that I have 3 C sharps. Now, when I'm looking at this information, it's saying of those 3 C sharps, there are a total of 14 hits. And let me show you where the hits is coming from. If I look at the C sharps, I've got 4, 7, and 3, which equals 14. But look at where they are. I have 1 that's in green and 2 that are in blue. So if I look at my C sharp, I got a total of 14, and I have 4 in green and 10 in blue. See how that ties in? So hits ties in with this hits, but it also breaks it down so you can see that this 14 is actually 4 things in the present realm of the voice file and 10 in the long-term realm of the voice file. So as far as activity, for example, I can look at this information and say, you know what, my client, has been doing pretty good recently, has some issues at present, but long term, there's some stuff that is definitely taxing their energy level. So that's the connection between these numbers and the points on the GNS tab. One of the common reports that we want to generate from our evaluation is titled a Note Correlate chart. So to render a Note Correlate chart into a PDF, for example, slide your mouse over to this printer icon and click on it. And here we have the Note Correlate chart that shows how many counts there are. Remember, we have 3 C sharps, etc. And gives you some information regarding the emotional aspects of the note and the physical aspects of the note. And so when it's above 4, let's say, oftentimes that means there's some serious issues to look at. So to export this and have it on your local computer, you have the option of generating a PDF or other formats. Typically people use the PDF. So we'll export a report and show it in a new window, or simply export a report and save it to the disk. So let's click on this one, and it generates a PDF of this report. Open the file, or we can save the file. And so we have that option to generate a Note Correlate chart. So you'll get this report, which is commonly provided to clients as information that's valuable. Well, that's the extent of the components of this tab, the GNS tab. And just a reminder, we have another evaluation. So if I click on this, it moves from New Eval 2 to Demo 1 Eval. See, watch here, we got Demo 1 Eval. Click on that little guy, and it moves to New Eval 2. Demo 1 Eval doesn't have any points because I haven't gone through this process. So what do you say we do an evaluation with Demo 1 Eval? So we'll go to the Wave tab, we'll pull points, and there we have the points that we pulled. We can zoom in by wheeling into the monitor and seeing things more closely. We can left click and drag the waveform over a little bit to see what's nearby. We can wheel our mouse out to zoom out. We can use this to slide at a fixed zoom rate of 500 points. I can change that to make it a closer fixed zoom rate if I wish. And of course, I can make it much larger if I wish. So those are the functions of the Wave tab. The GNS tab shows me the highest hits, shows me the notes that are tied to the points that I selected. I can sort this by any order I wish. Right now it's the lowest note of the scale, the C, but there are no C's that I selected or were selected automatically. So C sharp is the lowest one. There are no C's, but there is one C sharp and has 14 hits, and they're all in predictive. See how the red ties in with that? D sharps, I've got 2 D sharps, and 12 and 4 is 16. So if I go to D sharp, there they are, 16. If I scroll over here, 16. So those are some basic components of review for these tabs. Again, I can select how I want to see this. If I sort by point, lowest to highest, I have 2 in the predictive range. I have several in the present range, and I have a majority of them in the long-term range. And again, that's reflected here. I've got that one predictive at 14 points. I've got a little bit more in the present and much more in the long term. Some of the things that impact this, of course, is the report template. I have 3 subscriptions to templates. Presently, we're looking at the PTSD template. If I change that, you'll notice that the numbers change as well. Watch these numbers. Look at that. I have got a 0. How about that? A couple zeros. Quite a few zeros. Yes, so nutrition is a different lens. Seeing the voice print and using the lens to see what relates to those points that we pulled out of the frequency matrix. So that's how that works. And again, if I want to look at this Demo 1 eval and then jump over to the new eval 2, there I have it. And that's a little bit of an overview of the various functions of these tabs. Let's move over to the Frequency Hits tab. This shows me more information in regards to the GNS points. For example, G sharp has 2 hits, D sharp at 619 has 4 hits. And what we're seeing on the Frequency Hits tab are those hits, more specifically what the database is telling us are either low or high, depending upon which points we selected as GNS points from the wave file that we analyzed. So just to give you a perspective on this, these points generate these frequency hits. If I were to change these points and let's say remove the ones that have no hits, for example, then the frequency hits would change as well, because this is another kind of a deeper level of information based on the points that we selected on the Wave tab. Oftentimes people find themselves wondering what these things are, like glutamine or lysine or acetylcholine. And these are hyperlinked. And for example, by clicking on bismuth, it opens another tab on my browser, giving me a description of what the bismuth is. I can see and learn a great deal about this component, and if it's in my system and it's low, then that is indicative of a particular thing to look into, especially if it ties in specifically with my symptoms that I'm looking at. Another thing to take advantage of on this tab is inside this option that I showed you earlier. If I right click here, I have this thing called Group Panel. If I click on that, it opens up another area in here. And what I can do at this point is I can take one of my columns, drag it up into that area, let go, and now what it's done is it says that in the category amino acid, I count 5 things. If I open this caret symbol, it shows me what those 5 things are. If I keep going on with this, let's see, cell salts, I have 2 iron phosphates. Now, when something shows up twice, or even more than twice, it's more significantly important than something that shows up once. Oftentimes, when you're doing your analysis of what your GNS points tell you on the Frequency Hits tab, when something shows up 2 times, it's significant. This doesn't mean the same frequency necessarily created this information. It could be that 2 different points end up landing at the same point. So things that show up twice are more significant than things that show up once. Just to show you how this works again, I'm going to scroll up here and we're going to change our template. So as I was showing you before, I'm just going to pull this out just to remind you what you're seeing. The template we're using is the nutrition provider. And I checked this by looking at this on Wikipedia. I can uncheck that if I want to. Anyway, I want to change this template from nutrition provider to PTSD and see what kind of results we get. Click here. OK. And now you can see the template is PTSD. And this again is reflected by the fact that I have a lot more rings around my dots when I'm looking at PTSD than I do when I'm looking at nutrition consultant. So some of these are hyperlinked, some have yet to become hyperlinked, but it is a great option to learn more about what these components are by clicking on them and then reading about that information and seeing how that relates to your client's symptoms. Now, it could become quite overwhelming to see all these things and wonder, okay, now what? All right, well, let's do this. Let's take this group area and let's drag by left-clicking and dragging it up, dropping name in there. And now I see that I have 2 acetaldehydes or whatever. I'm not a doctor, so I didn't go through the discipline of learning that. But I see that I have 2 counts of this and 2 counts of that. And what else do I... Ooh, I got 3 counts of aspartame. Interesting. Okay. And it's a toxin, and this is significant. So maybe some of those diet beverages and foods are causing a real toxic issue with our client. And so what I can do is just look at this, learn about it, find out, what these different components are by using the hyperlinks. But what I can do now is I want to kind of assimilate things that are significant. So the next step is to assemble the results and create a report. Using the presumption that things that occur more than once are significant, let's go through the process of selecting those items so that we can export them into, let's say, an Excel file, and then copy that information so we can load it onto the MEMO tab of this particular evaluation. So by using name, I can get a count for these different components. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select things that occur more than once and then export them. But there's one important thing we must do before we start building a report. The hyperlinks are great for being able to kind of get more information about something that has a hyperlink to it. But as far as using a hyperlinked coded text, when you're creating a report, what happens is it shows you all the kind of background code that makes hyperlinks work in the cell where your information should just say aspartame, for example. So a key component before doing any kind of report building is to turn off the hyperlinks, and that's why we have this button. Click on Hide Hyperlinks, and now these are no longer hyperlinked, they're just words. So let's go through and select things that occur more than once. So we can bypass anything that says count 1, for example, and look for things that are more than once as far as the category that they're in. So since these are different categories, they're really different components, even though the name is the same. So we'll just kind of go through this list, selecting things that show more than one count, and look for any kind of duplicates. Again, this is just something I'm doing now as a way to show you how to build a report. It's not the only option for building reports, but the process that I'm showing you is the one that we recommend. So let's just keep going on my crusade for duplicates. Not seeing too many so far, but that's okay. They'll show up here. All right, not there. Okay. And let's see. Interesting. A person could spend hours learning about these different terms and the fact that there is an interrelationship, that one thing helps another, and to understand those relationships is definitely a powerful opportunity to get even more acquainted with how to help the people by using sound health technology. Okay. Serotonin? Nope. All right. Taurine. I know we ran into taurine as having more than one. And let's see, that's it. I think we got one more here. Check it out. Nope, not the same. Right, so I've selected things that occur more than once, and now what I want to do is I want to kind of set this up the way I want to see it as a report. So right now I'm using this fancy group panel thing, so I'm going to take that down for now and just throw that over here. And then see my selected stuff? I still have it selected, and what is selected will be exported. What is not selected won't be. So we have my hyperlinks are off. Nothing's going to be hyperlinked here. And so now I'm going to click on export to, or mouse over that, and I have the options here. And let's go to an Excel format. So I'll click here, and we'll save the file. Okay, another option, I could have just opened the file, couldn't I? I could click here, and since I'm using Mozilla, I can say open. And here we are. So see what I have here? I have an export of this information. Maybe what I want to do is clean things up a little bit before I export it. So let me show you what I mean by that. Do people need to know that it's a PTSD issue? Probably not. I can right-click in here and hide that column. I can keep the category, or how about this? How about if I organize it in alphabetical order, like that? Okay, now keep in mind that even though I'm seeing all this stuff, I'm going to get only things that are checked. Maybe you want to alphabetized by category. Okay, so I like how that's looking. So now we're going to export to XLS, and we're going to open it with Microsoft Excel. And there we have it. We've got the category, amino acids, genes, medication, toxin. The names of the components are here. And maybe I want to do some other things to this. Maybe I want to perhaps just select all of this for a minute. And I'm going to change the font size to something a little bit more visible. So how about 12? Another thing I want to do is I'm going to right click in here because I don't care to have the cells all boxed in like that. So now I'm liking how this is looking. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take the okay, well that's another thing I can change. I'll double click that and that scooches that in. And I like the spacing here. Maybe this column can narrow in a little bit. So I'm going to take this section, press Control C for copy, or I can use my right click on my mouse and click on copy here. I'm going to go back to my clients folder where we're working with their new evaluation, and we want to add this to the MEMO tab. If I just click on the MEMO tab, it's obvious that there's nothing in here because I'm not in the edit mode. So we'll click on edit to open that capability. And go over to the MEMO tab. And here we have this window I showed you earlier where you can add information. To add this exported Excel material, we're going to click on Paste from Word here. And then we're going to have the cursor in there and then press Control V as in Virginia. And this is the information that we copied from Excel. And we'll click OK. And now we've added the information to our client's memo regarding this evaluation. We can make additional notes here if we wish. So this is where you can add information. Like I was telling you earlier, you can take this text, you can use these preset types of headings, for example, it's all kind of preset for you, or you can change the font. Maybe you want sans serif and you want it italicized and you want the font to be red. So this is what we're building for our client's memo, and we'll save and close, or just save. Either way, let's say I'm in the middle of it and I'm not done, but I just don't want to lose what I got. That's why you would use save, but save and close it kind of does two things at once for you. So here are the frequency hits tab that we were on. Lots of stuff. And we selected things, we exported it to an Excel program which generated this, and then we copied this and pasted it in the MEMO tab. And we made absolutely sure after we're done playing around with these hyperlinked words, which give us an option to learn more using Wikipedia, we made absolutely sure that hyperlinks was hidden, because now I'm going to show hyperlinks, and now you'll see that these words become hyperlinkable, like GABA A receptor. What is that? Well, let's see. There we go. Cool. So when I am playing around and learning and trying to, get my head around all of the things that showed up based on my client's WAV file and the points that I selected, I will then say, okay, I'm going to build a report now. And so I make sure that I hide those hyperlinks. Just for fun, Let me show you what happens if you don't. So I selected this GABA receptor. Let's grab another one that's hyperlinked. There's one. Let's see. Anything else? Okay, how about this one, and how about that one? Okay, we're going to export this, same format, and we're going to open it with Excel. And this is what I'm talking about. You see, it has all this href, so it's a code that's used to make hyperlinks work. It gets kind of overwhelming, and that's why once you do that, it's no big deal. You just say, oops, I forgot something, and I know exactly what I forgot. I forgot to hide my hyperlinks. That's all there's to it. Another thing that happens if I click this button, I lose what I've selected. I've lost those items that I had selected. So that's why when you're on the learning curve, you're showing your hyperlinks, you're playing around with that, and then you say, okay, I'm done playing around with that. I am now going to select from 128 items those things that I think are significant or relevant to my client. So then I would hide hyperlinks, turn them off basically like they are now, and then I would start selecting things so that I'm not playing around with hyperlinks and then starting to select things to put them into a report, and then, oops, that's right, I got to do this, because the minute I do this, watch these puppies. The minute I flip that switch, it turns off anything that I've selected. So, do it a couple times, you'll figure out it's not the best way to go. And so that's how you make reports. Now you have this in the memo. Well, that's the extent of playing with the Apprentice level of the portal. I want to thank you for taking time to sit with me as we go over some of the basic functions that are available to you as an apprentice. All the best. Thank you.